And to further dissect net neutrality, we're joined from San Francisco by Evan Engstrom. He's the policy director at the Engine Research Foundation. Evan, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Evan, as we saw in Karina's report, Wheeler, the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, that is the top U.S. regulator, he just announced that he wants more power to oversee internet service, much in the same way that the government already regulates phone services and other public utilities. Is internet use a utility like consumers using electricity and water, and should it be regulated as such?
I think it is. It's important in the same sense. As Chairman Wheeler recently recognized, it's crucial to the growth of the economy. It's crucial to education. It's really crucial to every central aspect of our lives. I would take a little bit of issue with the idea of regulating as a utility. The proposal that Chairman Wheeler put forward is actually quite narrow in terms of its scope. It doesn't go as far as in regulating the internet as we regulate certain other utilities like phone or water. So it really is kind of a light touch approach that reinstitutes some of the rules that were in place in 2010 that were evacuated by the court recently, last year, and goes a little bit further.
Well, Evan, on the 26th, the rules that Chairman Wheeler put forward will be voted on by the FCC. What do you expect the result to be?
I think it's going to pass 3-2. Chairman Wheeler is one of 3 Democratic appointees to the FCC. The other 2 have already signaled that they would support strong net neutrality rules. So it's pretty well believed that it'll pass on the 26th.
So it'll pass, and what are the consequences then?
Well, we'll have net neutrality rules once again. We've not had them for the past year, so that's the most immediate impact. We're likely to see a legal challenge. That's almost certainly going to happen. And frankly, it would have happened no matter what rules the chairman would have put forward. So we'll see legal challenges play out over the next few years, but I think these rules are far less likely to be struck down.
Okay, well, Evan, on the other side of the argument, Netflix and YouTube and other popular on-demand video services, they're very popular. Internet service providers say they have invested heavily to improve their infrastructure to handle the heavy traffic that they demand. So isn't it only fair to charge Netflix and others a toll, a higher fee to move their data?
No, because that data isn't being broadcast. It's not like an over-the-air television broadcast. The data that Netflix and YouTube and all the other great services on the internet are sending is being requested by users of these internet service providers. We've already paid for access to this data, and really what the ISPs are trying to do is double dip, collect from both sides of the equation.
But they are the ones providing the infrastructure, and again, it could be said that most internet providers and telecom and cable companies will be disincentivized from further development. They're saying that the legal uncertainty and that the new regulation could impede innovation and investment. What do you say to that?
That's been a red herring argument that we've heard for a long time. These networks were built in an era when net neutrality was a reality, either because it was just a matter of the architecture of the internet, you couldn't discriminate against traffic, or because there were net neutrality principles or rules in place. And we're starting to see ISPs come around to that fact. Sprint told the FCC that Title II regulation would not impede its investment. Verizon's CFO told investors the same thing. So it's really kind of a scare tactic that I think isn't likely to impede investment.
Okay, let's look at another side of the anti-argument, and that's the concept of regulation at large. So far, the internet has flourished because there's been no regulation. If we start with this proposal and we get government in, is it only a matter of time before internet becomes bogged down with too much red tape? Are we opening up a Pandora's box of regulation, if you will?
I don't think so. One of the key elements of Chairman Wheeler's plan is called forbearance. And what that means is you're able to pick and choose very specific parts of the law that should apply to broadband internet. And the parts of the law that the chairman has proposed and that most advocates are supporting would really just reinstitute laws and principles that have been in place on the internet for most of its existence. So it's not regulating the internet in any real new way.
But potentially this opens up the box to other kinds of regulation in other ways. One thing I want to ask you is, how does this work in other countries, Evan? How is this issue handled by other governments?
Some countries have strong rules in their laws. Chile and the Netherlands have such laws. The EU is currently trying to figure out how to handle net neutrality. Other countries have softer rules, sort of principles that serve the same purpose in many ways. And of course, the impact of net neutrality regulation does change depending on sort of the robustness of the competition in the broadband sector. But even in the face of large competition, these rules are still important to prevent ISPs from abusing their gatekeeper power.
All right, Evan, but do you think that this benefits the consumer or commerce or government? Who's the real winner with this regulation?
I think the real winners here are consumers, startups, and the economy. Startups are the parties that would suffer most from a lack of net neutrality rules. If ISPs were allowed to charge for access to their customers, big companies could afford to pay, smaller companies couldn't. And as we know, startups are the ones that are creating the jobs. Startups are responsible for virtually all new net job growth in this country. So making it more difficult for startups to compete and innovate would harm the services available to consumers and would hurt the economy.
Okay, thank you so much, Evan Engstrom, Policy Director at the Engine Research Foundation.